to join. We're very much looking forward to kick-starting in a minute or two. Welcome everyone who's just joined. We're going to just wait a minute or two for everyone to join before we kick off.
Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm just going to share my screen and get us started. Great. Is everybody seeing their presentation slide nice and clearly there? Wonderful, lots of thumbs up. That's what we like. I'm just going to move my captions because they're over what I'm looking at. So let's move that down. So welcome everyone to At What Cost? Exploring Alternative Value Systems Shaped by Real Life. My name is Rebecca. I'll be guiding you through today's workshop presentation. I am a white woman in my late 30s with wavy blonde auburn hair. To make you aware, we will be developing an image-described version of this workshop in the coming months, so please contact the Universal Recognition Movement if this is something that you would like to request. We've also found out earlier today that there's been some technical issues with the BSL interpretation, but we're going to be following up with that with the deal team after the session to see what we can do. So yeah, contact us again if that's been an issue for your access today, and we'll see what we can do moving forwards with that. This workshop is being hosted by the Universal Recognition Movement, of which I'm the founder, and we are, oh, sorry, there's a image bar in the way, but we're a movement led by disabled, deaf, and neurodivergent innovators. We use accessibility and design research tools to support services, policy, and decision makers to create equitable change. And the reason that we do this is that it helps everyone to work together to universally recognise accessible futures that are fit for us all. Universal recognition is a growing global community connected through our shared experience of disability rather than place. And we also have a founding local Scotland network, the Universal Recognition Alba Hub. Last year, UR and I partnered with Deal to support you, the fabulous global organisers, to improve accessibility for your own local Global Doughnut Day events. We know we can only create fair and just economy if everybody is enabled to create. This is the approach we are taking again today, which is why we are really excited to have you here with us. We also have last year's resources linked in the PDF pack for this workshop, and the workshop will complement those resources. However, the content is unique to the UR movement's own research and innovation work, so do check out both. I forgot to check, but if anyone has those links available to them, Laura or Vinny, if you could drop any of those in the chat, that would be wonderful. As mentioned, I'm Rebecca. I'm a freelance design researcher and accessibility consultant working with organisations to help them create equitable services, products and policies. I specialise in co-production with marginalised communities, and I'm also a visiting design innovation lecturer at GSA SIT. I'm invisibly disabled. I sometimes, as a result, slur or lose my words, so my script is visible today to support my access needs, and so you can keep track of the activities as well. I have been the Equity and Accessibility Lead for DEAL GDD 24, helping to improve your accessibility confidence in dedicated sessions. And I'm joined today by my excellent colleagues and UR Alba Hub members, Jenny McGibbon and Max Phillips, who will be introduced to properly later in the session. So let's get started. We will be sharing some tough topics today. Being able to discuss these topics and bear witness to them is an important part of the work. Taking care of our well-being helps us to do this work safely. You know yourself and your circumstances the best. If you need to move, stretch or stim, i.e. use fidget toys during the session, then please do. If you are personally affected by any of the topics, you are welcome to take a comfort break at any time. Please take a moment to tune into your current environment. You are welcome to adjust your space at any point to meet your needs. Please ensure your microphones are turned off during this shorter session, and we'll be running workshop activities mostly through the chat function today to keep us to time. We're going to start with a quick value meditation activity. Please, if you're able, I'd like you to put your hand on your chest and breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, and out again for 1, 2, 3, 4. Think about a change to your current circumstances that you would really value right now. There might be many. Pick one that feels the most significant and hold it gently in your mind. It could be something like having had a bit more time to get ready today, to relax or to take care of yourself, whatever time of day it is for you. It could be wanting more support to attend today's session and also to continue to prepare for your own local GDD festival. Once you have this valuable change in mind, breathe in deeply and ask yourself the reason why this would be a valuable change. What does it afford you? So what's the reason underneath your reason for your change? And I'm just going to let us meditate on that for just a moment privately. Let's take a moment to consider, are the values and needs that you just thought of attended to, incentivised, or well-resourced within our current economic system? The answer is, of course, no, or rarely. And worse, our current economic value system often incentivises the opposite. Our current value system frequently disables and harms us and our loved ones. Now, this is a bold statement, but it's a true one, and the reason the Universal Recognition Movement decided to address value systems in today's workshop. Because if we can't learn ways to truly recognise and address why this is happening at both a macro and a local level, then we are in danger of recreating the same issues even within our donor economic plans for the future. We need alternative value systems that are built around and support our real needs. Marginalised folks are essentially those harmed by and excluded from safe participation in our current economic system. We exist in a world that is not designed with us in mind. Economic policy and research is no exception. What we design as our economic value system and what we incentivise within how we produce and provide for one another can marginalise, disable and entirely exclude people. GDP, gross domestic product, our current indicator for economic success, goes up or is seen as thriving during times of hardship and crisis. This happens during natural disasters, in times of conflict and through the trade of weapons. Companies can make disproportionate profits in times of global health crises, such as the pandemic, boosting GDP whilst choosing for worker wages to fall in real terms and not ensuring safe working conditions. GDP increases whilst real people suffer and have less than ever. Our value system incentivizes these situations and does not make visible the suffering caused. However, using the Doughnut of social and planetary boundaries, Raworth 2017, we can start to bring this harm into view. If we make people's harm visible on the diagram, we notice a curious pattern emerge. Harm is happening everywhere. Marginalised folks can be found actually on both sides of the diagram. We find people directly harmed and disabled by activity that also harms and disables the planet. We find people exploited in places where the planet is exploited. We find practices that are extractive of people where natural resources are extracted. We start to recognise universally why, where and how the planet, so nature, and our ecological ceiling, and people, our communities, society and the social foundation, are actually one and the same thing. This new illustration makes clear that humanity is part of our ecology and not separate from it. Breaching the ecological ceiling is often directly connected with breaching people's safety. Let's take a moment to be resilient and bear witness to this map in detail. This is a useful map that uses a disability justice lens to highlight what is happening outside of the donut of social and planetary boundaries. Drawing it this way helps us to see and to recognise the direct impact of our current value system on disablement and the harm of people. How can we then ensure that we don't inadvertently create value systems that are sustainable for the planet, but that unwittingly continue to disable people? How might we recognise and value ourselves as a diverse part of nature in order to fully understand and mitigate disabling harm? How might we start to create a new value system that encourages us to produce and provide for one another in safe, just and joyful ways? How might we centre our real-world experiences, like those that you just reflected upon when doing this work? Luckily, Raworth and disability justice movements have already started to do some of this work. The secret is building things around our real-life experiences. Old value is built around economic man, a fictional fixed character who doesn't exist in our real world. Values built around this character don't work as they don't map onto our real messy relational lives. In a fair and just value system, we need to be more realistic. So who is economic man? And if we aren't him, who are we really and what do we value? We need to shape values around the diverse needs we have as people living in the real world. We need to recognise how value is connected to and shaped by who we are to each other in households and communities and how we are part of the places that we live. From this, perhaps we can start to organise how we produce and provide for one another in a way that is fair for people and the planet. So who are we? Well, UR recognises that who we are changes over the course of our lifetimes. We recognise that this will matter as we shape our value systems. Over the course of our lives, we are all likely to experience diversity and disability at some point, either personally or through our relationships with our loved ones. Equally, this is not just a future issue. Our experiences of disability can also change over the course of a day. Stress, illness, accidents, or injury can all have an effect. No one is exempt from disabling experiences and needing our communities. It is perhaps helpful to think of ourselves or anyone in our communities as potentially pre-disabled. Does this change what we then shape in terms of our economic value systems? There are also some compelling statistics. Did you know that globally 1 in 6 of us are disabled? Yet who are these other 6 people? Because we aren't one-dimensional stick people with no community. We are all likely to know a disabled neighbour, colleague, friend, or loved one who we care about deeply. We are all real people with rich, complex lives in relationships of care with one another. Disabled folks are equally diverse. There is no gingerbread man, cookie cutter, one-dimensional shape for who a disabled person is. We come in all shapes and sizes. We exist in all professions, places, and communities. We have overlapping intersectional experiences. We have varied personalities and disabilities. Now, having reflected on our differences, you're all likely to be thinking about how you and your communities fit into this diverse picture. This is a good time to again pause for another activity. Please, if you're able, put your hand on your chest again and breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, and out again for 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd like to invite you to think about a positive change that your community would value right now. Again, there may be many. Pick one that feels the most significant and hold it gently in your mind. It could be something simple like having time to connect together regularly. It could be having particular resources to ease hardships. Once you have your community's valuable change in mind, breathe in deeply. Ask yourself of the reason why this change would be valuable. What does it afford your community? We're going to create a chat box waterfall. I'd like you to write, but don't send yet, the one key reason for why your change is valuable to your community. I'd like you to express what it affords your community collectively. I'll give everyone a moment to write that now, but don't hit send. And then in a moment, I'm going to invite you to hit send at the same time, so we create a waterfall of our reasons. So everyone have a moment to think about what your community would really value in terms of a change, and why that change is valuable to your community. And we'd love to hear why that change would be really, really valuable to your community, and get an idea about all the different values that are important in your places, in your neighbourhoods, in your communities with shared experience. And I'm going to invite you now to hit send at the same time. And hopefully everyone was ready. I'm just going to invite my colleague Laura, who's on the call with me, just to let me know if folks have managed to contribute their reasons in the chat. Laura, have we had some responses in the chat? Lovely. Would you mind reading a few of those out for me and choosing the ones that stand out to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
So really affordable, free, comfortable, and safe and adequate housing for all. Strong appreciation of the way in which creating space for different voices and perspectives benefits everyone. Tolerance. Freedom from consumerism pressure. Solidarity with care for all. Healthcare. Time to reconnect on an emotional level. This will bring us all closer together and understand each other better. Continued COVID precautions would allow my fellow high-risk community to partake in society fully again.
Yeah, that's one that resonates with me as well. Those are all fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing the reasons why your changes would be greatly valued by your community. This often takes a lot of courage in times of hardship. In the spirit of sharing and being courageous together, you are and I are going to share some examples of what we, deaf, disabled and neurodivergent folks value. We are also going to explore case studies and frameworks for what we would like society to recognise as valuable. We hope this will inspire you to be able to shape new value systems within your own communities around what you need to flourish safely and justly within the Doughnut. A key thing that disabled folks value is access and the social model of disability. When it comes to what causes us disablement or harm, the origin is often not who we are as people, but how the world is built. Disabled folks often live in a world not built with us in mind. This will start to sound familiar, but the way we produce and provide for one another is again built around fixed averages or fictional standards that aren't flexible to real people's diverse characteristics. A concrete example would be an architect designing a public building with stairs everywhere instead of ramps or elevators. A wheelchair user now can't move around. The stairs are a barrier, whereas a ramp or elevator would have provided access to everyone. The choice in how the building was made is disabling. What we value as disabled folks is flexible access instead of barriers. Access enables us and more people to take part in life equitably. Access often benefits many people, not just disabled folks. So you will notice on the slide, many folks can use the elevator who can't use the stairs. So we have an example of someone carrying heavy boxes and a pregnant person, someone who has a mobility aid and someone in a wheelchair and a child. If we start to recognise access and barriers, then we start to understand it's not folks' impairments that disable, but the inaccessibility of products, services and environments that aren't designed with flexible use in mind. This understanding is called the social model of disability, and it was first written about by disabled academic Tom Shakespeare. As mentioned, access and barriers do not just affect disabled people. Other communities are affected in intersectional ways too. In their book Design Justice, Design Values, Hard-Coding Liberation, researcher and designer Costanza Chock describes the design of an automated soap dispenser whose sensors only recognised white hands and light skin. Now you can understand the harm such a design can cause black and brown folks, especially somewhere like a hospital. In the book Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men, author Perez describes how women are also overlooked when it comes to how we design things. This happens as fictionalized standardized man is often incorrectly regarded as the default or a representative of all people in all our diversity. Perez writes, imagine a world where your doctor prescribes a drug that is wrong for your body, where in a car accident you're 47% more likely to be seriously injured. This is the experience of women and all marginalised genders who do not live in a world designed with them and their safety in mind. As Jenny, who's on the call with me today, you are Alba Hub and this thing they call recovery founder reminds us accessibility is actually something that everybody experiences. On a door, for example, the handle is the access. Barriers are created when that handle or door hasn't been designed flexibly with everyone's use in mind. A pull door with no handle would present a barrier to a non-disabled person trying to open it. You would have no way to pull it towards you. There are many folks equally who cannot use an excessively heavy door. So in this example, again, we have a pregnant person, somebody who is elderly and maybe weaker. We've got somebody who's experienced an injury. We've got a small child. We've got a wheelchair user and yet somebody who's chronically ill. And in this example, as we heard, if the door didn't have a handle in the first place, then everyone would notice that the access wasn't there. The access is there for people and designed with certain people in mind. Much like our economic policy, being built around the needs of a standard character economic man who does not exist, how we produce and provide to one another at a localised scale, so local service systems, environments and products are also not designed around our diverse needs. So how might this inspire us to create differing value systems that work for real people, non-disabled and disabled alike? Now, UR has started to think about just this within our academic and community-led research. We have developed a framework that starts to better recognise, define and value access so we can mitigate the risk of economic exclusion and harm for everyone. We have started to build an alternative value system that can be learned and adopted within organisations, household communities and places to indicate and incentivise access. I'm going to briefly take you on a whistle-stop tour of the foundational building blocks of our access investment framework as a very quick example and case study. Building block 1 is recognising when we are building our economics around a fictional or average persona, as this frequently results in economic design that does not map onto anyone's real life. The current approach creates multiple interconnected inaccessibilities and barriers within products, environments and systems. We have called these access deficits. Most people over the course of their lives will find there are times they can't participate safely in the economy because of access deficits. On to building block 2. When we start to centre people's needs in how we design the economy, there is another challenge. Building around an individual persona, be that a marginalised person or not, can also create inflexibility and inaccessibility. Building block 2 helps us to universally recognise when participation in the economy is built individually around one characteristic. For example, a standard razor marketed only at women, or being forced to watch a gig alone from an isolated disabled viewing platform. This scale of deficit we have called mono-access. This might meet a limited need, but it does not meet needs flexibly or relationally. In this circumstance, people are often isolated or other from their families or communities because participation wasn't built with a diversity of people living together in mind. Universal recognition's final building block expands our scope beyond this homogeneity. UR has started to build a map and categorise the types of variation in how communities and diverse people experience accessibility and economics. We learned that there are differing aspects to access. Enabling flexibility and overlap within the components of access expands participation. We call this mapping and the possible variations of access diversity. Broader and more flexible access diversity means that more people can take part. We are currently creating a toolkit where this research map can offer policymakers, designers and decision makers a set of values-based indicators for economic health, one that can be tailored to and further shaped by your community's context. The more flexible the diversity of access, then the healthier the economic strength. Universal recognition is continuing this research, and if you, your organisation, network or community would like to support us in this effort, then please do get in touch. There are also other fabulous examples of innovative alternative value systems created by disabled theorists, organisers and innovators that we can take inspiration from today. We have collated a few quick examples on the next slides alongside some brilliant case studies by my colleagues Max and Jenny. One such example is Crip Time, theorised by writer and academic Alison Kafer. Crip Time describes an alternative flow of time experienced by disabled folks. Crip Time can inspire us as it enables us to recognise differing values of time and how time is relative to our diverse experiences. An example would be experiencing a delayed social adolescence as you were chronically ill and had less access when you were young. Another one could be having your first paid job at 30 because finally there was provision of access diversity and less bias in the workplace. Smaller scales of time are also valued differently through Crip Time. For example, understanding that a deaf person may need longer to lip read captions, or for BSL interpretation, or your local sign language, because BSL is British Sign Language, so there are different languages around the world. Folks not communicating in their first language may intersectionally experience similar. A positive example might be prioritizing and embracing a sustainable pace that does not cause burnout, or the efficiency of communicating in sign language in noisy environments that hearing or speaking people would struggle to communicate. Understanding crip time can help us recognize and value these alternate experiences of time. With all this in mind, next I will invite my colleague Max from UR Alba Hub to offer us a case study of his project Mumble, which helps us to explore how we might recognise differing value systems in how we produce and provide for one another. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and rejoin you on the call, and I'm going to invite Max to be spotlighted and to share screen.
Perfect. There we go. So, hi everyone. I'm Max Phillips. I'm an Edinburgh-based product designer and universal recognition member. Recently graduated from the Glasgow School of Art with a first-class honours in product design, specialising in service design, research, and user experience. For a visual description, I'm a Scottish man in my 20s with a mullet wearing a black shirt. And as someone who has stuttered all my life, when I had the chance to create a self-initiated project in my final year of university, I was inspired to research and design a service to improve the livelihoods of overlooked and underappreciated people with communication disorders like mine. My goals were to foster communities, raise awareness of what stuttering feels like, challenge preconceived misconceptions, and shift attitudes towards stuttering. To create a practical, real-world solution, I focused on researching and testing my project to meet industry standards, creating a non-theoretical solution grounded in diverse, real-world perspectives and experiences. This ensured that the project avoided personal biases and aligned closely with user needs rather than just my perspective as a designer. Each step of my process was refined, iterated, and tested, gathering feedback, input, and approval from a range of interviewees, peers, and academics. However, finding these interviewees took some time, as I learned that many people who stutter were afraid of disclosing their condition, and also found it difficult to find or reach out to people with similar experiences. Now, I'll just scroll quite far here to a particular page. Before I delve into the research behind this project, I want to answer the question, what is Mumble? So Mumble is a concept that I generated in my final year of study, acting as a charity-like social enterprise designed to normalize stuttering, visualize what life with a stutter is like, and to offer a platform to create communities among people that do stutter. Although tailored specifically for stuttering, this system can be applied to any communication disorder. Mumble operates through cafes, transforming them into communicatively inclusive learning environments using a series of low-cost, low-tech, and easily deployable touchpoints. These touchpoints, such as specifically designed menus and booklets, foster understanding and conversation about stuttering in a positive light. So why cafes? Cafes are great vessels for informal interactions and are hubs for meeting new people, helping Mumble to champion its second crucial factor, connection. Many people who stutter experience isolation and find it difficult to find or reach out to people with similar experiences. Mumble provides a safe platform for building these conditions without the risk of embarrassment or pressure, helping vocally different people recognize they are not alone and encouraging the creation of local peer support groups in its wake, not just get a couple together. And due to existing in no specific location, Mumble can quickly hop around various locations for short amounts of time, with the ability to inform and connect many people from all walks of life. This project began by heavily researching the topic of stuttering and speech impediments, highlighting key issues and areas for improvement, such as isolation, lack of societal understanding, social stigma, and self-stigma. And in fact, I found a huge amount of evidence to show that people with speech impediments are often misjudged and disregarded, creating a negative outlook on the condition, while being unaware of all the positives and strengths. I found that people who stutter are inventive, often creating their own coping mechanisms to avoid stuttering. One such technique I found was physically moving the hands or body while speaking to improve speech flow, essentially visualizing their speech. From this, I considered how visualizations, parallels, or analogies could be used to further broaden the understanding of what a stutter is or feels like, representing specific experiences or feelings in a relatable and easily digestible way. Using this information as a starting place, I hosted a series of one-to-one interviews in person and online, incorporating inclusive interview techniques, allowing the interviewee to communicate not just verbally, but through writing and drawing, reducing the pressure of speaking. While researching, I found a particularly interesting quote: "Stuttering is only a small part of you, not the over-encompassing monster you think it is." Now, pairing this with the idea of visualizing a stutter, I developed an activity for the interviewee to personify their stutter as a creature, essentially bringing it to life. This analogy exercise could quickly help users talk about and represent their stutter in an easily digestible way. The results of this exercise revealed that the more someone hid or hated their stutter, the more control it had over their life, and the scarier the monster became. My theory was that fundamentally these monsters are the same, but the impact they have could be mitigated with the right environment, proper social understanding, and self-acceptance. And with these factors present, the user can get to know their stutter, removing the element of fear and control it has over them. However, for real change, it's essential not only for individuals to understand their stutter, but for society to view stuttering positively, requiring engagement and education to shift social perceptions rather than placing all the responsibility on the individual to fix their stutter. My research highlighted a range of different values and topics based on the vocal differences of my interviewees, presenting how exhausting and frustrating it can be to keep up in the conversation, discouraged by impatience from others and a lack of a supportive community. Many interviewees stated that they had never met someone they could even relate to, being too afraid to discuss how it affects them for fear of being misjudged. However, the same interviewees were also able to identify many strengths that they had developed from their different perspectives, being inventive, vigilant, determined, resourceful, funny, and adaptable, to mention a few. To better display these positives, values, and struggles of people who stutter, I created further analogies to express the invisible emotional side of stuttering, educating society, but also providing something for people who stutter to relate to and understand that they are not alone. This leads me to discuss a particular analogy of mine that concerned differing experience of time, such as crypt time, previously explained by Rachel. This analogy explores how what seems like a simple conversation to an ordinary person can become a scary and challenging event for a person with vocal differences, full of metaphorical minefields. Here we have a hallway symbolizing the length of a conversation, a person with a stutter and a person without a stutter. For the person without a stutter, the hallway is clear and easy to walk down. However, for the person with a stutter, their hallway is full of barriers and obstacles. It takes time to navigate this minefield, causing them to lag behind or trip up, ultimately requiring the person who stutters to use extra energy if they want to keep up. This can make conversations exhausting, especially when the people around you don't wait for you to catch up, making it harder to join conversations or speak your mind. And in particular, when surrounded by impatient people, where the user desperately doesn't want to trip up, and is under a much higher amount of stress than what may be expected of them. Different conversations can have different stakes and context, such as in work or home life. This analogy shows how important values of perspective and understanding are, but also how vocal differences can be interpreted differently when you are unaware of the individual challenges a person is facing. And that brings my excerpt to a close. But as a whole, we must be able to challenge assumptions and display respect and understanding to accept and celebrate difference. And I really hope you enjoy what we've heard today. And if you'd like to reach out with any work opportunities or questions, then I look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn. And now I'll hand back to Rebecca.
Thank you, Max. I will just get into screen sharing mode again. Ooh. Can everyone hear and see the slides okay? Great. I'm going to move my captions again because they keep bouncing back in the way. That was fabulous, Max, thank you. As that case study highlights how we embrace differing people's experiences in the ways we produce and provide for one another really matters. We need to work with folks so they can share their often invisible lived experiences and expertise in co-creating what they need. Another differing value system we could embrace or take inspiration from is the spoon theory. Spoon theory helps us quantify disabled folks' energy levels. The idea is that you start the day with a metric, a number of spoons, and each task you undertake will cost you spoons. When you are out of spoons, you are out of energy. However, your daily tasks might not yet be done. Micro tasks, such as lifting your arm to brush your teeth, might cost a disabled person the same number of spoons as a typical person's full afternoon of tasks. In a previous workshop, a local Global Doughnut Day organiser described a regenerative farm where the well-being of farm workers was measured and taken into economic account, which reminded me greatly of spoon theory. Our last example before Jenny's case study is that of the social battery. This value system measures how taxing high sensory or social environments can be on disabled folks with sensory processing differences. High sensory environments with lots of people, lights and sounds can create more of a tax, draining our social batteries. Alternatively, calm sensorily regulating environments can replenish our batteries. I would now like to invite my colleague Jenny, founder of This Thing They Call Recovery, to offer her design practice and business as a case study. Jenny's work culturally champions differing experiences of energy and value and caters to a disabled market. I will now hand us over, so I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny, and I'm the founder of This Thing They Call Recovery. I'm a white slim woman with short, dark hair, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So I wanted to talk with you today about how we can use our different varied lived experiences and value systems to enhance our own work, and why it's so important that people are provided the safe space to do that. For context, I set up my own design and consultancy business about 6 years ago, and being honest, it wasn't necessarily through choice. Traditional employment and the way it's often implemented currently isn't accessible to me as a disabled, chronically sick and predominantly housebound person. So I decided that I would try it on my own and see if I could make it work that way, bringing what I've learned through my experience of chronic illness into my work and really putting that front and centre of everything that I'm doing. Something that I've noticed through this work is that there's often an apparent assumption on there being this disconnect between designing for people's needs and designing for people's wants. Who is having their needs and wants considered? Whose needs and wants are we valuing? Where are we placing the importance? And crucially, why? It's something I come across often as a disabled person. Whenever disabled people are marketed to, if we're marketed to at all, it's in a utilitarian fashion. An example I use often is my shower stool. I started using one in my early 20s, and being honest, I was scared to start using it. I was scared of what that meant. Now, a lot of that was wrapped up in internalized ableism and ageism. I was making misguided assumptions. But a lot of that also came from the way that these products are designed and marketed to us. If I want a stool for any other area of my home, I have quite literally thousands of different options to choose from, different styles and colours. Suddenly, if I need one that can simply withstand getting wet and is non-slip, then I have essentially one option. It's white, grey, perhaps some clinical blue. It's clunky, it's ill-designed, it doesn't fulfil my needs truly a lot of the time. And quite frankly, it's an eyesore. Not because I associate it with disability and that I think that's a bad thing, but because those that design them, subconsciously or not, view that as a bad thing. It doesn't occur to them that I want this item to be a part of my home, that I'm not going to hide it away. It doesn't go with my home, it doesn't tie in with anything else that I own, and it isn't reflective of my style or me as a person. because really I'm not viewed as a full-rounded person by the people that designed it, and that's a problem. If accessibility and inclusion isn't ingrained in a company or a sector, or even education and employment as a whole, then you end up with everything aimed at disabled people being designed and marketed by people that are not disabled, and everything that's aimed at society in general not being inclusive or accessible. Assumptions are made about what we need or want. Assumptions are made that we're not like everyone else. Disabled people exist in a separate group in society. It's as if we exist in isolation. Disabled people exist over here, and everyone else exists over there, instead of the simple fact that we are all simply people. Disabled people deserve joyful design too, and the fact that even needs stated speaks to the vast divide in the ways that different people's values are approached. When I set up my freelance business, I said I wanted to make health content that didn't look like health content. I wanted to make things that were aimed at real people, because I know what it's like to be a teenager spending hours every week in hospital, feeling like nothing there is really aimed at me as a person. Nothing is particularly relatable to me. It's clinical and cold. Why do we make a conscious effort to make children's wards in hospitals inviting and less scary, with murals on the walls and colour in the spaces, and always having something to look at? But we don't generally do the same for adults. Why do we separate out a space that's being seen as being for people's basic core needs, and suddenly it's as if their wants cease to exist? Why are we not placing value on both? Why do people assume it has to be one or the other? Children's wards are serious places. Serious life-saving work is done there. Scary things happen there. I know, I was in and out of them many a time. That isn't belittled or disregarded by having colour in the space, for example. We simply recognise that these sick children are still children. Sick and disabled people are still people. You can design spaces and experiences, products and services that are inclusive of sick and disabled people, that do cater to our needs, that also include elements of joy, humour, connection. They can be gentle and fulfilling and human. That's what happens when access and inclusion is truly valued. Another large area of difference I've noticed in value systems is the way that we think about rest. As someone with chronic fatigue, that's a big one for me. I have over 50 products in my shop that specifically reference rest. Okay, that's how seriously I take the topic of napping. It means a lot to me. When I first got chronically sick, I slept 20 hours a day. So I know that rest isn't always wholesome. It doesn't always help. It isn't always easy or feel good. I desperately wanted to find a way to reframe my rest because, quite honestly, I felt a lot of shame around it. And that's something that I come across often, even from healthy non-disabled people. We talk about the importance of rest, sure, but how often does it still end up at the end of your to-do list? How often is it still seen as something that you have to earn or justify? It's framed as allowed only if it's a need, but not a want. There's a lot of talk now about how rest is productive, which it absolutely can be. When I started my product business in 2020, I even made a print that says rest can be productive too. I don't sell that anymore, on purpose. Instead, I sell ones that say rest counts. Because absolutely rest can be productive, but it shouldn't have to be, and it isn't always. We think we're shifting the viewpoint on rest, but are we really shifting it enough? If the value is still being placed on the fact that it's productive, and we're not allowed to rest when we're framing it as anything else, is that really that inclusive? We come across something similar in how disability accommodations at work are framed as a tool for maximising the productivity of disabled employees, instead of them being something that maximises the health and safety and general well-being of disabled people as people. We see it in how disabilities processes and benefits processes are spoken about in the media, about how the importance is on getting more people into work. And while yes, absolutely, employment should be far more accessible than it currently is, what about everyone that simply can't work? If the value is consistently placed on individuals' productivity, If we can't even rest without that being the focus of the conversation, where does that leave us? And what value systems is that still upholding? We're constantly learning as people, or we should be. We learn and we move things forward. We change the way that we speak about things, the way that we frame things. We change where we place value. It shifts the more we think on it. And I would encourage anyone to keep thinking on it. And also to go nap, because that matters too. And on that note, I'll pass back to Rebecca.
Fabulous, thank you, Jenny. I'm just going to share my screen again. Now, I love Jenny's work, partly as I am part of her target market and she knows us really well. Absolute joyful products that get us to think differently about value, including things like rest and naps. I'm going to end today's session taking us through an activity and tool that we can use in our communities. I'm going to end with a board game workshop activity that can help us to recognise and define what we value within our organisations and communities. In the UK, we have a board game called Snakes and Ladders. Players roll a dice to move along the board. If you land on a snake, you fall down and you go further back along the board. If you land on a ladder, you move up along the board and progress in the game. To represent disabled folks' experiences, I have been developing a new version of this game that centres the experiences of my blind and disabled family members. This new game is called Up the Ramps and Down the Towers. It is set in a fairy tale world of access and barriers that mirrors our own. In this game, ramps that we can shuffle or roll up are access. They move you up and along the board. Towers with stairs are barriers where we get stuck or carried down the tower against our will. They keep us behind a go, or we are moved back down the board. We are working on a tactile and audio version of this game with differing fairy tale versions of access and barriers as you land on towers or ramps. This helps us to define examples of access that we value and want to incentivise, and barriers that could harm us that we want to de-incentivise. So we're going to end the workshop with a tool to build your own Doughnut economic board game with your community. To create it, you will need to work out together what are the positive things, so the access, that progress your community towards the Doughnut. What are the tougher negative occurrences or resources, so the barriers, that keep you stuck behind or moved back outside of the Doughnut? You can add detail to the game, positive and negative cards, to use on good or bad squares. Positive access squares move you on in the game towards the Doughnut. Negative squares move you back and away. You start outside the Doughnut in the centre hole and work from there towards the Doughnut in a spiral. And now there is likely another game from the other direction that centres the needs of the planet too. I'm going to invite everyone to take a screen grab of this slide because I'm going to move us on, but I want you to have this as a resource in your communities. So I'm going to give everyone a moment to be able to take a screenshot of this slide with the activities written down for you. If everyone could give me a thumbs up when they've managed to take a picture, that would be great. We've had one thumbs up, so I'm just going to wait a moment to see if we have any others. I can't see everyone as well. I've only got a certain gallery view. Oh no, hang on, I can scroll down. Oh, lots of thumbs up. Brilliant. Great. So yeah, please take a photo or screen grab of this slide as well to work from in your communities. It is not playing the game that will help you to define the characteristics of your value system, but the discussions that you will have designing the game. You are invited to use the tool and build the game with your communities and organisations as a way to start to recognise and define your new nourishing value systems. You can decide what icons represent your positives and negatives in relation to your community or place. Again, has everyone taken a photo of this particular slide? Because it's slightly different from the other one. Seen one thumbs up. Yep, a few more coming in. Fabulous. I'm scrolling down and seeing how many people are on the call, and it's really nice to know that we're with such a big community today. That's great. Now, as we're really good for time, I'm going to invite, I was allowing time to be elastic and schedules to be really supple today, because that's part of viewing things in a disabled and divergent way, allowing for things to go wrong and for us to take more of a sustainable pace time. So I didn't know whether we were going to have time to do this. I'm really glad that we do. We've got about 10 minutes just to do this. So I'm going to invite you to pop into the chat. What are the positive occurrences or resources, so the access that progressed your community towards the Doughnut? What are things that you think could be on the squares that allow you to progress? What is access for you? And I mean access in the broadest terms, so not access in relation to disability, but just access in relation to your community's values and needs and your context. And I'm going to invite you to have a think about those and write them into the chat. I can't see the chat, so this is why I'm a little bit uncertain as to whether anybody's written anything down. I'll perhaps invite Laura just to give me an indication as to whether people have written things. Lovely. Laura, would you like to again read some of those out as they're coming through?
Yeah, will do. I think people are just waiting to think about their answers. So as soon as they do, I'll let you know.
Great. So yeah, what are the positive occurrences or resources, so the access, that progress your community towards the safe and just space of the Doughnut? And you can think about it in terms of place as well. So if you wanted to do it from a planetary perspective, an ecological perspective, that would be welcome too. As we looked at earlier, people are part of nature, not separate from it. And our ecology obviously impacts and shapes our own needs. It's a big question. This is why I've given it you as an activity to be able to do with your communities and to take back, because it's one that you can really think about. And then you can have fun playing the game as well once you've designed it. I should have had some gentle thinking music that folks could opt in to listen to for this moment. We'll do that next time. Everything's a design process. This workshop can evolve as well.
So Rebecca, we have a few responses.
Brilliant.
So we've got more accessible spaces with ramps, prayer spaces, easy access to BSL, language translations, food choices. Virtual access helps as a resource like today and allows more of us to come together. The political will to address long-term issues where the electoral votes on short terminuses. Support network and kindness, intellectual, emotional accessibility. Time and patience, even when the movement is possible for all, it may need more time. Access to healthier and local or seasonal food. Access to repairing and reusing things instead of throwing them away. Distributive practice. Access to better pathways for everyone, and access to more silent spaces.
Wonderful. I should have written them down as you were saying them, but I'm just going to try and remember a few. So one of them is access to food. So a space that you could land on the board game might be a farmer has set up a regenerative community garden in your local area. You now have sustainable food for the coming months. You move on to places because you know, the farming land has let you move on. You could have, I think one of them was access to more quiet spaces and meditative spaces. So again, you could have, you have been nourished with some, afforded some time to meditate and to rest. You've had a good sleep, and there could be like a bed or something that could move you on further places onto the Doughnut. So you're getting closer to the safe space on the Doughnut. Laura, could you just remind me of some of those ones? There were some really great ones, and I know I've missed them because of brain fog.
Yeah, sure. So we had also like prayer spaces, language translations and BSL.
So yeah, so an example for that is a BSL interpreter and interpretation has been booked so that you can connect with someone over the other side of the world. Again, we had remote sessions as well, didn't we, as enabling people more access. So perhaps you could have yeah, little bits of speech and sign that allow you to move on to places onto the Doughnut. You can be really creative with these and think about the imagery or even the 3D aspects of what it is that have afforded you something positive.
Another one,
yeah.
yeah. So there's something around, so two things. One is time and patience, and the other one was just intellectual and emotional accessibility, providing support and kindness.
So again, yeah, time is one of those things. Time is so interesting when it comes to access. This is one of the things where we think about flexibility of access, because sometimes, you know, you can't provide everything for everybody. You can't provide something universal, perhaps at the same time. But what you can do, or in one product, but what you can do is over time provide a variation and a diversity of access and different options for people to be able to take part and get involved. So that's one of the components of access that we think about really, really deeply when it comes to universal recognition. And we're wanting people to universally recognise access so that they can feel confident in it and provide it for each other, rather than thinking, you know, you have to meet all need at one time in one go. You know, it's a learning process, and it's very, very relative to people's contexts and their places. So those are fabulous examples. I'm just going to move us on to the last couple of slides. And we'll see where we are for time after that. So lastly, I'd like to say thank you for you all joining us today, and to Max and Jenny for the absolutely brilliant case studies that we had. I know in the chat I saw people responding to those with, yeah, really, they really appreciated being able to hear about those case studies and ideas. I'd really like everyone to create one last burst of comments in the chat box. If you could please write one surprising or useful thing that made you think differently about value from today's workshop in the chat, to bring the workshop to an end, that would be really wonderful. And we've got time to read a few of those out as well. So yeah, so thinking about one surprising or useful thing that made you think differently about value from today's workshop, pop that into the chat, and I will stop sharing my screen, and I'll come out so that I can see the chat function as well. I think we've got some from earlier on as well. But we've got, yeah, so joyful connectivity is something that you've found really useful and valued, and useful from today's session. Needs versus wants from Jenny's case study, absolutely. You know, when we're thinking about needs, we're thinking about something that's far more acute, so that's something really valuable. someone's given the feedback that they would have liked the value meditation to have been longer. Absolutely agree. We had a really short session today, and I wasn't, again, with the elasticity of time, sure how long we were going to have. When you are do training sessions in accessibility confidence, we give a lot longer. We have a whole afternoon to do these types of activities and lots more tools. So yeah, completely understand that feedback. We are all part of the same system. It's not us and them. Yeah, so exactly, you know, we are all in our shared diversity together, and we are part of the planet, not separate from it. We're part of nature, not separate from it. Max's example of people being more supported, resulting in less scary looking monsters, absolutely, was super valuable, applicable to a lot of situations too, absolutely. I think, you know, we have a lot of invisible struggles in when we're experiencing hardship, whatever that hardship is, and finding ways to make that more visible and noticeable. And like Max's example of getting people to draw their monsters, you know, we can then bring our monsters out and share our vulnerabilities together, and that can be really, really useful in working out what our needs are, not just what our wants are, but what our needs are, as Jenny said. I like the idea of decisions that led to the creation of disabling environments. It shifts the assumption to one that an environment should automatically be enabling, and I really like that way of looking at it. Absolutely, yeah, that's one of the big ones in the social model of disability. And one that we also give as an example in a story that we do at some of the beginning of our training, we get people to think of the perspective as being a bird who lives in a world where monocropping, so having the same crops in the field, has become a thing that happens everywhere, and it's really depleted the what would be considered the natural resources. And when we've had feedback from that session and people getting to think about what has disabled the little bird and created food scarcity for them or created their injury or hardship, people were like, oh, well, it's just the natural environment. And then we discussed it further and we're like, oh, it's actually interesting, isn't it? Because that was a choice. It was a choice to monocrop the land and to not rewild it. And it was a choice made by humans. So that has disabled the bird. It's the environment and the choices that we make. And so enabling environments are really, really key. Thank you so much. Great session. Needs to be circulated more widely, presents really valuable perspectives. Oh, thank you, Sarah. That's really, really wonderful feedback to hear. Yes, we're trying to do more. We're all disabled and we all have limited energy. So yeah, we struggle to get things out there, but we are slowly and at a sustainable pace working on it. And Deal have been really brilliant at resourcing us so that we can have these kind of sessions with people and reach people all around the world as well. Yeah, spoon theory, we may have different metrics for measurement, absolutely. So it lets us understand that yeah, measurements of energy and experiences are relative to our own experiences. They're not something that can be applied to everyone. Again, yeah, that can really help us when we're looking at what we need in our context, in our own places and environments. I love how design is the common thread among the talks and practice, function and good aesthetics for everyone. Yeah, absolutely. So design thinking is key to what universal recognition is all about, and thinking about, you know, we make the world and we shape the world, and it gives us, we can't control everything and we can't dismantle really big problems, but if we work together on the small issues together and we look at how things are designed and made, we can start to change things in practical ways for the better, I believe anyway. And the other folks in the universal recognition movement think that as well. And yeah, that's why we're starting to work together as a unified movement to yeah, support everyone in, because everyone is a designer. You know, when you make a choice, when you make a creative choice or just a life choice, you're designing what's happening around you. And we're not in full control of it, but we can definitely shape things for our communities. So wonderful. That was, yeah, brilliant feedback, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, my brain fog is is kicking in hard because they've been talking for so long. Oh, I know how we should end. We have a panel coming up later on marginalised leadership and how we create more marginalised people in positions of decision-making power. We've got a fantastic panel for that, so please check that out later. And if you want to get in touch with us at Universal Recognition, Vinishri, my colleague, is dropping some good links in the chat. And also, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, if you're interested in supporting this work and researching with us, helping to invest in it, like DL and I are still, looking, we've got projects that we really want to continue working on. We want collaborators for those projects, and we also want to have them be well resourced. So yes, if you want to connect, I would love to hear from you both personally and through the Universal Recognition Movement. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Please, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message afterwards to say who you are, where you connected with me with, or like how you heard us speak, because otherwise you know how the algorithms work, you just end up a name in a long list. But I really want to make these connections meaningful, so do start a conversation, because I think that's how we start to make change and get these things done. It's 2 minutes to the end, and because we've been talking about rest today, I think everyone probably needs to go and decompress after this very, very full session of information. So you've got busy days ahead, busy day ahead with all the different sessions and with your global organising for your events in your own places. So please go, take rest. Thank you so much for being with me today. Before we go, would everyone be happy? Well, we're being recorded today, so would everyone be happy for me to take a screen grab of everyone? If people want to turn their cameras on for just one moment, and we can perhaps all wave, do that cliche thing of waving if we are able, and just to say thank you for being together today and to celebrate that. So I'm just going to take a screen grab. So waving now would be wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I will let you all go and rest and enjoy the rest of the fabulous sessions that we have coming up today around the world. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Rebecca.
Thank
Bye,
you
everybody.
so much. Bye. Bye. All right, I'm gonna hop off the call now. Bye, everyone.